I want to start, of course, with the news that Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel says the country has evidence showing that Iran had a secret program to build nuclear bombs. Your thoughts on this?
It's nothing new. We knew of the possible military dimensions of their program up until 2003. The Obama administration, when they were negotiating the JCPOA, chose to not pursue that issue. But we've all known. I mean, it's like the biggest known secret out there relative to their previous activities. So this is really not groundbreaking. We've known of this for some time.
So if we've all known about this, how does this factor into how the administration makes its decision in 2 weeks' time on whether to pull out or stay in the Iran nuclear deal?
So I don't think it affects the decision relative to pulling out. There are three issues they're looking at and hoping that the three European members working with us will deal with. One is greater inspections, so that would focus on this issue that we know they've cheated in the past, or cheated. It wasn't even cheating. We know they've lied about their previous programs. It would deal with ballistic missile testing, and then it would deal with the sunset provision, because right now, as you know, after 10 years of this agreement being in effect, 7 years from now, they're off and running again. So it's an agreement that didn't have much of a duration. That needs to be solved along with the other two issues I mentioned.
If the administration decides to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, what would that look like the next day and in the coming months?
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, I think that we would implement the secondary sanctions component of our sanctions, which would mean countries and companies in those countries would have to decide, are they going to do business with Iran or do business with us? I don't think that it would mean an immediate breakout by Iran. I mean, it would take a while for them to change course. And they would have to determine the negative effects, because the Europeans, Russia, China will still be a part of the deal. So I think it's hard to tell at this point. I think the best outcome would be to resolve the problems with the deal, which is what we've been working with our European counterparts with for about a year, and that the president has been focused on with both Macron and Merkel and others. So I think fixing the problems will be the best solution here.
Now, of course, many Republicans and the president all see the Iran nuclear deal as a bad one. If that's the case, why is there so much premature optimism over a nascent North Korean deal that hasn't yet secured a firm concession from Kim Jong-un?
Yeah. Of course, we don't know the components of any deal that might happen with North Korea. I think there was a majority of people in the Senate and House that believe that the JCPOA was a bad deal because of its short-term nature and other aspects. But with North Korea, we're just beginning, so we don't know what it might entail. We know that for 25 years they've been elusive, right? I mean, they've taken advantage of the goodwill of the West. They continued to develop their program when they said they weren't. So I think everyone approaches this with great caution and skepticism.
Now, I know the dynamics around Iran and North Korea are distinct, but big picture, there is a concern that if the U.S. backs out of the Iran nuclear deal, it undercuts our discussions with North Korea to denuclearize. How can Washington be trusted as an honest broker now and, more importantly, down the road in the future?
So, I've met with the president multiple times on this issue, as I have my counterparts, not only here but around the world. And I get it, and I can argue that you're right. If we're going to step out of this deal, what's to mean we wouldn't step out of one with North Korea? I will say this was an executive agreement. Only one person agreed to it, and that was President Obama. It wasn't a treaty. The second thing is, and I read the comments that President Trump made, which I think are true, this was really not a very good deal, and it does expire in 7 years. In many ways, there are components that stay beyond that. But I think it could send just the opposite message, that we're not going to enter into something that is as frail as the JCPOA was. So I've used that psychology with the president. I think it would be best if we fixed it and stayed in it. I'm talking about the Iran deal. But I think these two leaders are so unique. I mean, Kim Jong-un is very unique. The president's obviously unique. I don't think that what happened with Iran really is going to affect his thinking. What's going to affect his thinking, he sees having deliverable nuclear weapons as his ticket to being able to die as an old man in his bed. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons, and he's not around anymore. So I think he's going to be viewing it more from the standpoint of how does he stay in power? How does he ensure regime change doesn't occur, invasion doesn't occur? So he's going to be looking at his own security and whether he believes that the people who he's dealing with will keep their end of the bargain.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit to U.S. politics. As I mentioned, a lot of people here have been saying on the sidelines, the conversation is about politics, whether it's in the U.S., whether it's globally.
Yeah.
Let's go more local. You're not running for re-election.
I'm not.
You've made that clear. Do you plan on remaining in the Senate for the remainder of your term?
I do. Sure. I mean, it's a great privilege. I'm chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee.
I ask because there was discussion that you're being considered for ambassador for Australia. Would you be interested in that?
You know, I heard that when I was leaving town the other day, but no one has talked to me about it.
So no invitation has come to you yet?
No.
Okay.
So.
A recent poll showed that the Democrat vying to replace you, Phil Bredesen, is leading the Republican Marsha Blackburn.
Yeah.
How concerned are you that your departure from the Senate will lead to a lost seat for the Republicans?
Well, look, when I ran, Scarlet, I told the people of Tennessee that I would serve for 2 terms. You know, I'm chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee now, and you know, the influence that you end up having does make you at least think twice about it, but I felt it was the right thing to do. Bill Frist before me, whose seat I'm sitting in now, he ran on a 2-term situation. He was majority leader of the Senate. So actually, I think it's best for people to run, have a passion for what they're doing, take it all in, and do the best that they can and not worry about the political downsides of tough decisions.
Does that mean you support the president's support really for congressional term limits?
Look, I honestly would be way okay with term limits. I think that I mean, I've got friends in the Senate that have been there for a long time and no doubt have institutional knowledge, which I appreciate and respect. I do think there's something. I think people would view me as being a very independent senator. I think there's something to be said for knowing you're there on a mission, you're there to serve your country, you're there to make tough decisions that'll make the country stronger, and leaving. I'd be perfectly fine with term limits. I really would.
What's the ideal?
I used to think that Senate staffs would overtake senators, they'd have more knowledge. After being there 11 years and 4 months, I just don't think that. The learning curve on the front end is really steep, but pretty quickly you develop enough knowledge to make decisions, and the learning curve, even though every day we all learn things, it flattens out over time. I'd be more than fine with that.
What's the ideal number of terms that a senator should serve, or a congressman?
Well, of course, we have people there who think 10 would be the ideal number.
From where you sit?
Look, I think a couple of terms is ideal. I know there are some people. Howard Baker, who was a great senator from our state, served 3 terms. I don't know that I even want to get real involved into the debate. I made a decision based on what I thought was the right thing for me and the country, and right now other people have to make that decision themselves.